All right, I spotlighted, now we're recording. Okay, so we're very excited to continue this chapter of the oneness of God, which is in the Shema. And of course, it's a most appropriate and most important section of the Tanya. Talking about the oneness and the unity of God is a major theme of the Torah. But before we start, since in today's class we're going to talk about talking too much, so I just want to share with you that a couple of years ago, this guy came to me and told me his wife wants a divorce because he was talking too much about, spices and herbs. I told him, well, I think it's about time. And I said, I really think
No, you didn't really do that, did you?
yeah, I told him, it's partially his fault.
No, I just got that.
Oh my
And you know what he told me? He told me, Rabbi, that is sage
sage
advice.
advice. Oh,
Okay. All right.
oh.
Oh boy,
Are
okay.
you muted? Beth, are you muted?
What? I should have been muted? Okay.
Oh, she said, "Whoa."
You know that joke is not very oregano, you know.
Oh boy. Okay. It's being thrown back at me. Okay. You got to be ginger over here, okay? Okay, be kind, be ginger, okay? Um, okay. Remember, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Okay. But all right, I'm done. I'm done with the spicy jokes.
We're gonna pepper you with laughter.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. All right. I'm out. All right, enough. I tortured everybody enough, right? Okay. Um, so let's get to the topic at hand. Let's recap. We are in the section of Tanya starting from chapter 18 and on, where we want to discuss the shorter path to connecting with God. And we started off on the topic that if we understand that deep inside of us, there is a soul that does not want to disconnect from God. If we can tap into that part of ourselves, then we will be able to withstand any temptation. How do we know that we have a deep part of ourselves that does not want to disconnect from God? Because we see even people are very irreverent, very irreligious. When it comes to a question of faith, they will withstand a test, even giving up their lives for God. And we brought, some modern day examples for that as well. Okay. From that, we started chapter 20, in which we are on a long explanation to explain, okay, I get it. When there's a test of faith, I can withstand that test. But how do I withstand a daily test, right? How do I withstand the day-to-day things that come upon me? And so we are in a long process of explaining how really every single sin and every single mitzvah can be compared to idolatry or belief in God. How so? Well, that's a long explanation. We start off by stating a fact that all of the commandments are included in the first 10 commandments, that I am the Lord your God and thou shalt not have any other gods. And this brought us to a discussion of God's oneness with the world, God's non-duality, the non-duality of God. And so we started discussing last week that when we say God is one, we don't just mean that God himself is one, meaning that God is not made up of multiple parts, right? When we say God is one, we actually mean God is one with everything in the world. There's nothing outside of God. There is nothing that is separate from him. There's not God and the things he creates. Everything is part of God. That's what it means to say that God is one. We brought a verse that said that I'm the Lord your God who has not changed. That means that just as there was only God before the world was created, so too, once the world is created, there is nothing, there's nothing new. How is that possible? Only if we believe in the non-duality of God. Non-duality means there's no dual, there's no two. Dual means two. There is nothing separate from God. If everything is one with God, then before the world there was only God, and after the world there's only God. So in essence, what we're saying here is that nothing has changed from God's perspective. Now, to us, we don't see ourselves as being a part of God. So to us, it looks like something has changed. To us, we see a world, and that world looks separate from God. And so we say, oh, before there was no world, now there is a world. But to God, since the world is one with him, he says, before there was me, and now there's me as well. In this week, we are going to explain how that actually works. In other words, last week we said a fact. This week we're going to explain how does that work. How is it possible that there is a world and a world that we see, and nevertheless, that world is God and not considered separate? So we're going to take it step by step to, so to speak, bring us to an understanding of what the world is and what the world isn't. And I will start with, the Tanya will start off with, and I touched upon it last time as well. The Tanya will start with, as I said, usually the way we talk about how the world is small is to say that, well, look at us here on this earth, we're so small compared to the universe. Remember, in this class, in the Tanya's view, we're actually saying the entire universe is, so to speak, subsumed within God. In other words, it's not just that we are tiny compared to God. The whole universe is subsumed within God. How so? How is that possible? The answer is going to be, we have to look at with what does the world exist. So there are many people who believe that the world exists and God is, so to speak, the master former of the world. In other words, he takes matter and he forms it intelligent design. We, of course, believe that the world does not exist in it of itself. The world only exists because God is creating it every single moment, which means that the world itself has no inherent existence. It's not a separate thing from God. Its only existence in as much as God gives it the energy to exist. As we're going to read in a moment, an example of a flying stone, okay? If you take a rock and you throw it in the air, is it a flying rock or is it a rock that is flying? Now, again, I may sound silly by asking the question, but it's not a silly question. Again, is it a flying rock or is it a rock that is flying? The answer is that it's a rock that is flying. Rocks inherently don't fly, okay? Birds can fly, maybe planes can fly. Rocks don't fly. The kinetic energy of me throwing it allows it to be flying at this moment, but it's not a flying rock. The same thing I would say is about this world. This world, you could say the same thing. You could say the world exists, or it's a world that is existing. Again, do we say the world is here, like this is the world is here, it's just here, or do we say it's a world that happens to be existing? That's the way Judaism looks at it. In other words, it inherently does not exist. It inherently does not belong here. It just happens to be existing because God is allowing it to be there. It's just like this phone. This phone inherently is not here. Really, it belongs down there, right? It's only here because I'm holding it. So really, the phone is nothing. The reason the phone is here because of my hand. My hand is really what's here. The phone, to a certain extent, is really not here. It happens to be here because somebody's holding it up. But naturally, it's down there. So the same thing as this world. There's an energy that God places to vivify this world. If God were to withdraw that energy, the world would cease to exist because it would stop being held in place, would stop being created at that moment. As such, this is a qualitative flaw, if you want to call it, in the world's existence. There's a qualitative flaw in the world's existence, that the world does not have an inherent existence. It just happens to exist because God is within it. So we're already on the path to understand how the world does not change anything in God. Because truthfully, even the world that exists is just an energy of God. It does not have its own existence. The moment God's energy disappears from it, it would cease to exist. So let us see that idea in the text over here. Let's take a look at text and share the screen. And let's share. Okay. Now let's zoomy zoom. Zoom golly golly. Okay. So let's read over here. Okay, it says like this. Let's read the last line of the previous page. The world does exist, but in God's presence, it has no independent existence, since it is perceived as part of his existence. So let's continue. But if my internet goes out, that means that the issue on my computer means that the issue is computer. Someone asked here if this world doesn't inherently exist, is it a projection or simulation? I'll read the paragraph and then I'll answer the question. Let's read here. It's a good question. For the cause by which the upper and lower worlds have come into being, something from nothing, and through which they continue to be energized and sustained in existence, so they don't revert to null and void as they were previously, is nothing other than God's word and the breath of his mouth, which is present in them, right? If you recall, God creates this world with the 10 utterances. God said, let there be light, and there was light. We are told God created everything with his words. So God's words are the energy which gives life into this world. Now you might say, well, what do you mean? But God only spoke once. Well, that's the difference between us and God. When we speak, our speech comes and goes. When God says something, it lasts forever. Let's continue. And again, speech, when we talk about God, is a whole different manner than when we talk about our speech. Integral to a non-dual understanding of the universe is the notion that the creation of something from nothing is an ongoing process. God must continue to will all of his existence into being, otherwise it would revert into primordial nothingness. Borrowing the biblical metaphor of creation through borrowing the biblical metaphor of creation through divine speech, God's word must continually be spoken to ensure the ongoing existence of every detail of the universe. Let's continue. Let's zoom in here. Here's a paragraph of explanation. Chabad discourse often illustrates this idea with the analogy of a stone thrown into the air. In order to continue its ascent and counteract the gravitational pull downwards, the stone requires a continual supply of kinetic energy provided by the initial thrust of the hand. As soon as this energy is exhausted, the stone begins to fall. The motion of the rock is analogous to the existence of the world. If God's creative input were to cease, the world's existence would revert to its more natural state of nothingness. The need for a constant sustaining force points to a crippling fragility which plagues the existence of all matter. The rock in our analogy never changes in substance or character. It has not become a new species of flying rock. Rather, it is a rock that happens to be flying due to an acquired quality of kinetic motion. Ongoing creation teaches us that even when the world does enjoy existence, that existence is an acquired property, not an inherent one. In the same way that even as it soars upwards, the stone's natural tendency is to fall downwards, the universe similarly tends towards self-annihilation and reabsorption back into its divine source. The apparent static phenomenon of the world's independent existence is in fact dynamically sustained by a constant creative force. So we have a hard time with this concept because we see the world and we think the world is here. And for you to tell me it's not here, you'd have to do something to get rid of it. And all the examples we're going to bring are not going to change that perception. Why? Because even the example of the rock, I can only bring an example of an element of the rock that doesn't belong. For example, the rock exists. I can tell you the rock flying is something that doesn't belong to the rock. And therefore, the moment the energy in the rock flying disappears, it'll fall down. Same with the phone. I can tell you the phone doesn't belong. At the moment I let go of the phone, it falls down. But the phone itself exists. See, in this world, we cannot make things disappear. In this world, things are always here. Okay, and you can change it from one matter to another matter, but matter always exists. But our belief is that the matter that exists is not inherent. How do we know? Well, before God created it, there was no matter. There was only God. So that matter exists is akin to a flying rock, or akin to the phone being held here, or akin to holding a wall that's going to fall. In other words, it doesn't belong at any moment. It needs the energy within it to hold it back from going back to its natural state. And its natural state, as odd as it sounds to our ears, is non-existence. This is what we have to get into our mind. The natural state of the world and everything is non-existence. It's a powerful thought. It's a crazy thought, but when you think about it, it's true. It's hard to grasp because we live in a world where we just see everything and it's here and matter is here. And like, what do you mean matter doesn't belong? It's here. But if we recall that before matter was here, it wasn't here. So the only reason it's here is because God is giving it a energy. Well, what happens the moment God takes away an energy? It's a simple equation. There was nothing. God is giving a energy into the world to allow it to exist. So what happens the moment God pulls that energy? It's like pulling the plug of a refrigerator. Okay, the refrigerator stops working immediately. It's not, oh, it takes a couple days. Okay, it remains cold for a couple days, but you know, it immediately stops working. You pull the plug on the world and they cease to exist. You know, sometimes they have all these different cartoons. Maybe one day I'll show the Kabbalah tune. It's this cute, cute idea of this, guy who makes a hologram of himself, and the hologram pulls the plug, and of course the hologram disappears, right? Anyways, so that is our understanding of this world. Is that the first thing to understand is we look at this world and we say, how could this world be nothing in the face of God? And God looks down and says, this world, this doesn't even exist. I happen to be throwing it some energy. It's me. It's my energy. It doesn't exist, and I have to take it away, or it exists separate from me. It's my energy every single moment. It's a barely in existence. It's only there because I'm there. It's like if I'm holding up a wall, right? And you say, "Wow, that's beautiful. That wall is standing really nice." And I say, "What do you mean? The moment I pull my hand away, the wall's going to fall, right? The wall's going to fall the moment I pull my hand away. It's not a beautiful standing wall. The wall doesn't even belong to be standing to begin with." God looks at us and says, why are you so enamored by this world? Why are you so taken? Why are you so pulled? Why does the world pull you in so much? You know, and you're so afraid of the world. The world doesn't really exist. It's just my energy that's in it. As Lyle writes here, it is. The world is ising, as someone says. It's ising. It's existing, but it's not a inherent existence. All right. So someone asked here, if the world doesn't inherently exist, is it a projection or a simulation? So it's interesting you asked the question. We have to say the world does exist. How do we know? Very simply put, the Torah says, Bereshit bara Elokim. In the beginning, God created. So the world does exist. We are, though, clarifying its existence. It's a real existence, just as the rock is currently flying. The world is a real existence. But it only exists every moment by virtue of the godly force within it. So we would have to say it exists, but it's not an inherent existence. But it does indeed and in fact exist. There were some scholars. This was actually the discussion amongst scholars at a certain point, but we have to say that the world does exist, but understand that the entire world's existence is God and God's energy that's within it.
Rabbi,
yes.
Would this be like different from saying that the world exists as opposed to our perception of the world exists?
What do you mean our perception of the world?
Well, you're in the realm of reality, right?
Yeah.
And what we've discovered is that there are different levels of reality. Okay, there's the reality of the world, the reality of the universe. I mean, it gets bigger and bigger, and it gets minuscule, right? Like somebody would say, my mother is overbearing, and that would be a reality towards somebody's perception. But is she really overbearing? And to say that God exists is really like our perception of God exists, could be a reality, as opposed to, other, like for
That's
some
correct.
people.
Right. So without the Torah telling us that the world is created, it's possible that there would be no world, and it's literally a perception of our souls. It
Yeah.
would have been possible. It would have been a hologram or a projection, as David mentioned. However, since the Torah tells us, Bereshit bara Elokim, God created the world, we do believe it is not just a perception, there is a created world. Now, we will all perceive the world differently, but the world itself does exist. And again, that's because the Torah tells it. Is it
Yeah.
possible? It's possible
Yeah.
we could all be dreaming it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because if this was a reality, wouldn't everybody agree? And
If
as
the
we
world
know,
is
we don't.
created is a reality, wouldn't everybody agree about everything you're saying?
Well, it's a reality, is what we're saying.
We are saying the world does indeed exist, but that doesn't change that our perception of the world is off. In fact, it clearly is off. We perceive this world that exists as a separate entity from God.
Yes.
That's our perception, even though it's not true.
Yes, that's what I said. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I agree with.
Yeah.
All right.
So our perception does not necessarily have to match the reality.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. Good questions here. Okay. I'm sorry, I changed webcams. The other webcam was glitching. It's not as clear, this one, but it's not glitching. Okay. So we have gone with stage one. I want to just say that this idea that we just discussed is discussed more at length in section 2 of the Tanya. If you are interested, you can go onto Amazon and purchase the Practical Tanya Volume 2. And you can read more about what we discussed today. However, of course, we'll probably get to studying it in a couple of years when we reach it. But it is a complex topic. As someone wrote here, it is confusing. Anything that is not simple is confusing. It takes time to allow it to sink in. And in fact, it takes a lifetime of work because it is not the reality that we perceive. But let us summarize. What is the Tanya exactly? I mean, this is the Tanya. We're studying the Tanya. Tanya has different sections, though. So we're reading Tanya section 1. Okay. So to summarize what we said today is that the world, as it exists, it does not have an inherent existence, but it does exist by virtue of God's vivifying force in it. So until this point, we can say that qualitatively, the quality of the world's creation is not that impressive. The Tanya is now going to make a second argument. The Tanya is going to say not only qualitatively the world is not impressive, also quantitatively, the world is not impressive because we just said a moment ago, the world is created by the energy of God. And now we're going to compare the energy of God to the many energies that God can put out. So now it's a quantitative argument. So again, there's a qualitative argument. The qualitative argument is saying, oh, all this giant world is really created by a mere life force of God. It doesn't have an inherent existence. Okay? In other words, one could come and say the world is not important because God is so vast and the world is just a small speck. Okay? But the Tanya is going to take it 2 steps. The Tanya is going to say the world is a speck. But the Tanya is actually not going to say the world is a speck. The Tanya is going to say the energy of the world is a speck. So it's now 2 steps removed. So it's really a nothing. So again, step number 1 is this world that we see that exists is really not really its own existence. It's existing by virtue of the energy of God. And even that energy of God is just a speck of God's energy. So to the questions of what the Tanya is, we can discuss after the class. So we would derail the topic at hand. So to discuss So again, that's a very big difference than how many people perceive our nothingness to God. Many people say, well, many people throw out the word like, can God really care about me? I'm just a small little person. He has bigger fish to fry. And so first we're saying it's not just a quantity issue, right? God is so big and you're so small. There's also a qualitative issue. We're just created by his energy. And now we're saying not only that, but the energy that we're created by is insignificant and nothing towards God. So we're going to go with this analogy of speech, because when it comes to speech, the world is created with speech. So if the world is created with speech, some people can talk a lot of words, right? How many words does a person talk in their life? What's the does a person talk? How many words does a person say a day? 500 to 700 words is what they say. No, sorry. At a normal, I don't know. Anyways, regardless, we say a lot of words. How many worlds is the world created with? 123 words. So we're going to first start making the argument that this energy that God gives into this world, which is his speech, is very insignificant. And we're going to take it again into multiple layers. And the multiple layers are going to be, number one, 123 words compared to how many words a person speaks in their lifetime is not a lot. Then think about, of course, God can speak unlimited words. And then on top of that, think about how speech is really not even the highest level of a person's energy. Our thoughts are deeper than our speech. So the world is even lower than our thoughts, than God's thoughts. Let's take a look at the text over here. So again, this is quality, not quantity. 16,000 words a day. That's how many words you say. Oh my gosh. Okay, so yeah, we say a lot of words. And it only took God 123 words to create this world. So let's take a look. Let's draw an example of human psyche. The source of this example, which is the Tanya's key illustration of the non-dual idea in this chapter and the next, is from the Baal Shem Tov. And it says like this: when you say a word, that single word is utterly insignificant, even in comparison to the lower garment of the soul, the general power of speech. Which of the soul's three garments, thought, speech, and action, is its middle garment? A single word is insignificant compared to the soul's power of speech, since that power of speech can produce a never-ending infinite stream of words. Of what significance is one word when compared with the power of speech that can produce words endlessly, right? So many of us, even though we can talk 16,000 words a day, we probably don't even talk the amount of words that we can, but nevertheless, we can, in theory, talk and talk and talk with no end. So he says, all the much more so is that one spoken word insignificant in comparison to the higher levels of the psyche, such as the soul's innermost garment, thought, from which those spoken words are derived and powered. If one word is insignificant when compared with the power of speech, then certainly it is of no significance compared with the power of thought, which produces all the content that is later spoken. Let me just pause on that for a moment, because you might say, well, like, well, what do we care that I could think more than I speak? Remember, we're trying to get to an idea over here, is that the energy that God puts in this world is a very far removed energy from God, is really the concept that we're trying to say. In other words, even this giant world that we see doesn't really exist because it needs God's energy within it. And even that energy of God is not even his prime energy. It's a very far down the food chain, so to speak, energy. So let's take a moment between our thoughts and our speech. Our thoughts, you can sometimes have a thought that can take much more words to describe. Words are a limiting energy. Words have a limited process. Our thoughts can contain a lot more than a word contains. Just I'll give an example because I was discussing this the other day. It's just an interesting example. Let's say Hebrew. Hebrew words sometimes have a lot of meaning. And it's hard to translate. Like you take 5 English words and you still don't really get to the essence of what the Hebrew word originally means. It can in context mean different words, but the essence of that word is hard to really describe. So back to our personal psyche. In our personal psyche, our words limit the idea. sometimes we have an idea and it can take us 20 minutes to give over that idea because the words limit. Imagine if I could transfer my thoughts, right? If I could literally take a chip out of my mind and stick it in your head, we'd save a lot of time. We can give over ideas much easier. Words are limiting. So that also means that words are farther removed from the deepest recesses of your soul. Words are really a way that we communicate what's in our soul to someone else. But what's deep within our soul is very hard to communicate. So it's farther removed from the essence of who we are. Words are farther removed from the essence of who we are. That's why sometimes we judge people based on their words, and it's not always right. People say, "Don't judge me by what I said," and it's true, because people are much more than their words. People are actually even much more than their thoughts, but their thoughts are much more than their words. That's why, right, we tell kids when they do, and we're much more than our actions as well, right? That's why we tell children when they do something wrong, like you did something wrong, maybe we'll tell them, but you are a inherently pure, good person, right? In other words, our actions, our speech, even our thoughts to an extent are only external expressions of us. And the farther you go up in the food chain, the farther they're removed from us. Our actions are farther removed than our words are. And similarly with our thoughts. But surely our thoughts, actions, it is complicated. Sometimes you can circumvent circuits, but our thoughts are much deeper than our words. And so here when we're talking about a world that's created with God's speech, so to speak, we have to bear in mind, A, is that it's only created with 123 words. So how much is that compared to how much energy God can output, which of course is unlimited. And B, is that's not even from the deepest essence of God, because it's like speech compared to thought. And then, take that a step up, and thought compared to the essence of our soul, as he says here. It goes without saying that a single spoken word is insignificant in comparison with the soul's pre-linguistic deep core, which consists of 10 powers mentioned above in chapter 3, Chachma, Bin, and Das. Since it is from these powers of the deep core that the letters constituting the thought are ultimately drawn and are subsequently expressed in the spoken word. So this is a complicated concept, to understand that our souls exist without words. Let's read what he says. Even in a human being, we see that words of speech are utterly insignificant when compared to the higher powers of speech and thought, and certainly to the person himself in his deep core. Apparently, then, we can say that the same of God's speech, through which the world is created and is sustained in existence, that it is of no significance compared to God himself. This adds a further dimension of our non-dual understanding of the universe. In the previous section, we argued the world has no independent existence, since it is utterly reliant on God for its continuous existence. Here, the argument is taken a step further. Even the divine power that creates the world is of no significance compared to God himself. I just want to explain, why is he making this argument? Because this is the total reverse of how we think. It's the total reverse, shall I say, of how we perceive the world. We perceive the world as this giant existence of a universe that goes on, and we look at it and we're like, how is it possible that this giant universe can exist and God hasn't changed? There's nothing added to God. And so we've changed the whole equation here. Not only does this giant existence not have its own inherent existence, but even that existence that God is, even the energy that God is giving into it, is nothing. It's peanuts. It's, I don't want to say the bottom of the barrel, but it's something that in theory God can say is insignificant. So I just want to say, so anybody who says, well, God has bigger fish to fry, God really cares about, who's president and where's there a flood and a tsunami, inherently, no, God doesn't. To God, this world is so insignificant. The whole universe is insignificant. In theory, the world is insignificant to God. God chooses to care. And if God chooses to care who is president, he also chooses to care about you. The president is not more important than you. They're all nothing. They're all tiny, insignificant nothingness compared to God's essence. This whole world is a joke, so to speak. In reality, okay, God doesn't have to care about anybody and anything. It's created with a mere glimmer of God's light So all that is to say, this is when I say always we take lessons from each Tanya class, is we should never tell ourselves that God cares about the big things and not about us. God's too busy. No, God's too great to care about the world at large either. So if you believe he cares about the world at large, he cares about you too. How do we know? Because God said so. God says he cares about you. God says he cares about you and everything about you. And that, my friends, is a deep and powerful thought that I think is important to bear in mind. The other thing I always want to say about this, whenever I talk about God's care, is that you can't say about God that he's actually too busy to care about us. Why? Because God's infinite. God, by definition, cannot be too busy. God, by definition, cannot be too preoccupied. God can, by definition, not have too many things on his plate. He can care about everything all at once and still have plenty of time for golfing. Okay, that's a joke. But I'm saying, like, lahavdil. But I'm saying God has enough time for everything. He's infinite. He's not limited by anything. And he can care about you, and he can care about me. Someone here asks, we are part of God, so how can he not care about us? It's a good question. If we are part of God, but we are not God. We are a part of God, we are not God. In other words, you're asking a philosophical question on what I just said. If, as I am, we are part of God's energy, I guess that's the argument we made here. We are not, if you want to say, part of God himself. That makes sense? I don't know. How could God not care? Well, he's infinite. He could choose not to care. But we are... Right. There's a line people say all the time. God is everything, but not everything is God. We are not God. We are part of God's energy, part of God's life force. We are subsumed within God. We're like the rays of the sun within the sun, but we are not the sun itself. These are all delicate analogies because it's really impossible to fully comprehend. And I'm not going to lie to you to tell you that I fully comprehend either. It's a lifetime of study to get some glimmer of understanding. But again, I would say that we are not God. We are a part of God's energy, if that makes sense. Okay, sorry, you had to go. Okay. It's, she said her phone was dying. It's a great analogy, right? The phone is not on. It's the energy within it that keeps it on. It itself is not on. Okay. There's a great video by David Aaron. David Aaron made this great video. Again, even after watching the video, you will have trouble understanding. But let me see if I can pull it up. I'm going to show this video because it's a 3-minute video. It maybe will help explain what we're talking about. Maybe not. It gives another analogy of a drop in the ocean. Assuming and he has another example of electricity. There's different analogies. Ultimately, we give analogies for this. 1 second. Ultimately, we give lots of analogies because we can never fully explain it. It's very hard to fully explain. But just so you know, there's a rabbi called Rabbi David Aaron. He lives in Jerusalem. He has great ideas, worth looking him up. And his stuff is really great. And I'm going to share this short video. Hopefully it'll add something to this class.
Whoa, Seymour? You look like you've been hit by a tidal wave.
My love life's a total wash.
What happened?
Bubbles dumped me.
No way. What'd she say?
So we're enjoying a couple drinks at the sandbar. Out of the blue, she says, we need to end this watered-down relationship.
Wow.
It gets worse. She then says I'm shallow and not capable of true love.
Why?
Because I don't believe in the ocean. She's gone off the deep end.
Seymour? You don't believe in the ocean?
Nope.
Why?
Show me the ocean, and I'll believe.
You can't see the ocean.
Why? Because he's too far? Someone somewhere in heaven, right?
No, 'cause he's too close.
Huh?
The ocean's not someone somewhere. He's the one everywhere.
Everywhere? Then we'd be in him, and he'd be in us.
We are in him, and he is in us. There's really nothing but the ocean.
We're nothing?
No, we're drops.
We're drops in the ocean? Oh, how depressing.
No, it's pure joy. There's no greater feeling than feeling part of the greater.
Float that one by me again?
Seymour, the ocean is one. There is none but the one. And you are someone, some of the one. You're a part of him.
Gil, you're either brainwashed or drunk.
I am drunk. I'm drunk with love. I cannot but love the ocean. And I cannot but love everyone down to the last drop. Because we are one with him and one with each other through him.
Whoa! You mean only in and through the ocean can we drops share one single greater self?
Exactly. And that's the miracle and joy of true love.
Gil!
So I'm not sure there was another video he had that would explain this idea more, but it's one example is the ocean, but not exactly our topic. I guess I really liked the video because of the corny water jokes. He has another one that I think is about the electricity and bulbs and lights. It's a very delicate idea how to explain, because in that analogy, well, is a drop the ocean? The drop is not the ocean. The drop is a part of the ocean, but it's not an ocean. It's not an ocean, right? A drop is not an ocean. Again, these analogies are not perfect because ultimately the ocean is made up of many drops, whereas God is not made up of us. That's why I'm saying we bring multiple analogies to try and explain this, a concept that ultimately is hard for us to fully grasp and entertain because it's beyond human understanding. Okay. Let us, now that we've had this discussion and we're all thoroughly confused, just to explain, we're confused. It's a delicate idea to explain how we are part of God's energy, but yet we are not God. We are created through God's energy. Because you can ask me the question, so then is God's energy separate from God? Well, that's a lengthy discussion in Hasidic philosophy. And that's why I just say the Tanya here is giving us the short version. These are ideas that are discussed at length in Jewish topics in Hasidic philosophy, very deep. And even at the end, it's very hard to understand it all. I want to point out that there's actually, if someone is really interested and wants to be a scholar in these topics, there's a new book that just came out. And the first topic is actually about the nullification of the world to God in the Rebbe's Torah, which is very fascinating. It's written by a non-Chabadnik, a guy who graduated from YU. I'll just share with you on the screen who this guy is. So it is, it's a guy called Dr. Yosef Bronstein. He wrote a book called Engaging the Essence, a 710-page book talking about the Torah philosophy of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And the first topic of it is nullification, bitul. As he says here, the Rebbe had a unique approach to God's unity and the bitul of the word. Bitul is a complex concept that can't be translated, but often is understood as something like nullification or non-existence of the world. Yet the direction in which the Rebbe took it is just fascinating, ending up in a place that has a path to engage the world and reveal godliness that underlies it. I love seeing how both the Rebbe developed an approach from the sources and also how he made it so eminently practical. So if someone is interested in this topic, to go further at length in a scholarly way, because this is a lifetime of work. It's a great book that just came out. It's not on Amazon yet. I was looking for it, but it's on other websites. It's called Engaging the Essence, the Torah Philosophy of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So it's beautiful to see new tools always coming up. But the Rebbe had a lot of deep, deep insights into this concept, which is a very complex concept and is really discussed all over Hasidic philosophy because of its depth. And as I've showed you, how hard it is to fully grasp it. And as many analogies, that's what analogies are. Analogies can only explain one idea of the idea, because there's no perfect analogy. If there was, we wouldn't have to discuss. Every analogy contains an element that helps us understand one part of the concept, but you cannot take the whole analogy because the whole analogy will not match up with the concept. I say that because Hasidic philosophy employs analogies all the time. That is to help us get closer to the idea, but always remembering that we are not fully grasping it. Okay. So if you're confused, you should be, because if you fully grasped everything that we spoke about, then I would be the top teacher in Chabad, and I would probably be able to retire. No, I'm kidding. I'm saying, like, these are concepts that have to be discussed over a lifetime. We are giving the general idea. The general idea here today is explaining how the world does not have an inherent existence, and even its existence is an energy of God that is removed from the essence of God, if you want to say it like that. It's very far down the chain. All right, and we're continuing along with this analogy, explaining how the deep core of your soul has no words, and therefore words are very far down the energy chain. In section 3, the Tanya described the deep core of the soul as pre-linguistic. We will now clarify this point further so as to gain a deeper understanding of the Baal Shem Tov's analogy of non-duality. For in the garment of thought, there are also letters and words like in a garment of speech. Only in thought, these letters are more intangible and subtle. So if I were to explain that in a very simple way, words limit. Words limit. The words of speech are more limiting than the words in your mind. That's why sometimes you have a thought in your mind. You might even have words, but it's hard to put them down. It's hard to write it down because you kind of have words, but not fully. So let's continue. So let us continue here. We have another 10 minutes. He says like this. But this is not the case with the deep core in the 10 powers of Chachma, Bina, and Das, which are the root and source of thought. These 10 powers reflect a psychic state prior to the emergence of letters, before an idea or feeling takes expression in the garment of thought. The 10 deep powers of the deep core, which represent your intellectual and emotional energy, are the driving force behind what you think and say. But in the deep core, there are no actual letters or words. They only crystallize later in the garments of thought and speech. So that's a very interesting thought. Think of it like a child. A child, when they're born, does not have a concept of words. Yet, you can make the argument that they can, but let's put that aside. Let's say they don't have a concept of words. At a certain point, they do. They just can't express it, right? So a child does not have a concept of words, yet they are a fully functioning human being. So they can function without placing their thoughts into words, right? So they don't think in their mind, I want mommy. They are thinking, I want mommy, but not in words. So there's some deeper core about us that has no words. And this is all to say that the energy of words is a limited energy, even the words within your mind. So he says like this. For example, when a feeling of love or desire initially falls into your heart, before it rises from the heart to the brain to be contemplated, it doesn't have any tangible component, letter, or words yet. It's just a plain desire and fervor of the heart for the thing you crave. And certainly there was no need for words or letters prior to the desire and craving for that thing falling into your heart. When your recognition of the thing as something desirable was merely in your chachma, your intellect and mind, i.e. when you were aware, I'll explain this in a moment, when you were aware that this thing is pleasant and desirable, and that is a good idea to acquire it and connect to it, whatever the thing might be, such as learning a particular subject and in particular delicacy. So the way it works is like this. We gain knowledge about the world around us, right? So we gain knowledge, ice cream is good. Then sometimes your heart desires the ice cream. Then your mind thinks about how to get it. and then you get it, and then you enjoy it, and then you enjoy it. When you have a desire, sometimes the first desire, the initial desire has no words. That's why sometimes people are in a moment of great passion, great feeling, a moment of great fear also, and they cannot express words. They cannot express words because there are no words. It's in the deepest element of their soul, the 10 powers of their soul, which do not have words. Okay, that's what he writes here. I'm going to skip the paragraph. It is only after the yearning and craving already fell into your heart, and the thing is desirable, fueled by the recognition of your chachma, intellect, and mind, and that desire subsequently ascend from the heart to the brain to be pondered and contemplated upon, how to actually carry your desire, i.e. how to actually get a hold of the food or acquire the knowledge. It is only at that point that letters must be born in your mind. So again, the initial feeling of wanting ice cream may not have any words, just as when the child wants something, there are no words. It's only once you're thinking about it, how to get it, you want to try and get it. So let's continue. These letters of thought being of each nation and their language, of which they speak and contemplate all worldly things. Unlike feelings of the heart, which have a universal language of unarticulate desire. It's an interesting point. People who speak different languages, they think in different words, but their feelings are the same. That's once again another proof that words are limiting, and they are not the essence of who you are. The essence of people is similar. That is why movies can be translated in different languages, because they convey different feelings. And those feelings are universal. The words limit, but the feelings of the heart are beyond words. They're closer to the essence of your soul. And so all this is to say, coming back to our analogy of speaking, when God speaks, number one, his speech is what gives existence to our world. Without the speech, the world would cease to exist. Second of all, one word compared to how many words God can say is nothing. Second of all, God's speech compared to God's thoughts is nothing. And God's thoughts compared to God's, so to speak, more essence, which we know thoughts are not our essence, as we just proved in many different ways, like the baby, like the people in different languages. So God's energy of speech is compared to God's essence, really a nothing. Let's continue. This analysis offers us even deeper insight into the non-existence of the world as a separate entity from God. In section 3, we argued on a quantitative basis that words are of no value compared to the powers of speech and thought. The power of speech can produce an infinite number of words, and power of thought can produce an infinite number of ideas to talk about. So quantitatively speaking, one spoken word is null and void compared to the powers that create the speech and thought. In this passage, we have added a quantitative dimension to avoiding the world's existence, arguing that in the deep core, there are no letters or words. In other words, it's one thing to say one word compared to many words is nothing. But one word compared to the area where there are no words is even more nothing. So that's what he's made the argument. While one word may be infinitely insignificant to the powers of speech and thought, the comparison still makes sense. Okay, it's 1 to a million, but it's still 1 to a million. But how can you even begin to measure words in relation to the deep core where there are no words? God's word then is both quantitatively and qualitatively null and void compared to God himself. And if that is the case, the universe whose existence is sustained by God's word is certainly null and void. We can therefore affirm that neither the creation of this world is something from nothing, nor the creation of all the spiritual worlds brought about any change in God's non-duality. And just as he was the only singular and exclusive existence before the physical and spiritual worlds was created, so too remains the only singular and exclusive existence after he created them. Okay. Next chapter, we're going to end here today. Next chapter, he'll go into how do we even have an analogy? How does God's speech compare? But we end off here with the important thought that God's speech, that this world is qualitatively and quantitatively insignificant. Now, you may tell me, Rabbi, even though it's insignificant, it's something. That's why we started off with the first point. The quantitative existence of this world is a quantitative insignificance, meaning it's not even really existing. It happens to be existing. It's within God's kinetic energy that's in it. So it's not even it itself. It's God's energy that's in it. So it's not even in itself. And on top of that, we've added a qualitative, that even the energy that's in it is practically nothing compared to God himself. It is a mere glimmer of the world. Mere glimmer of God himself. So we should walk away from today that when we try to think of the greatness of God, this is the beauty of Hasidic philosophy. Many people try to think about how God is great, right? Some people think about God is like 1,000 roaring lions, he's super powerful. Or some people might think, wow, look, God is the universe. Look at how big the universe is. And Hasidic philosophy turns it all on its head. All right, you looked at the universe. The universe is giant. But then think about how all this universe is nothing compared to the spiritual energy that vivifies it. Even that spiritual energy is nothing compared to God that gives it that energy. And that is actually how our prayers work. That's how we do in our prayers. In the morning prayers, we start off in the morning prayers talking about how amazing and giant the world is. And then we move on from there talking about the spiritual realms. We talk about the angels. And then we speak about the Shema, the unity of God. And then from there we go to the Amidah, where we stand in front of God, because it's a step-by-step process. First we say, wow, this world, look at how giant it is in that, and everything God creates in it. And then we move on to the spiritual. I'm saying, even this giant world that God creates, look at the spiritual energy that's creating. That's its real source. And even that spiritual energy compared to God is nothing. So we talk about myriads of angels and thousands of angels. This to give us a concept, an idea of just how much spiritual energy that there is, and we're just a mere glimmer of it. But after all of that, we say in the blessings of the Shema, right before we say Shema, that nevertheless, God shows us. That means God cares about us. So no matter, we have to first understand how insignificant we are, and then realize that nevertheless God cares about us. And that creates our love of God. That's how we have such a love of God for the Shema. The Shema is the buildup. The Ahavte Hashem Elokecha, you should love the Lord your God. Why do we love God in the Shema? Once we've understood how insignificant we are, and we said, nevertheless, God loves us so much. How can you not love God back? How can you not love him back? So thank you all for coming. That's my spiel for today. I'm going to stop the recording.